Um, yeah, obviously, a little bit for today, looking back on this year, and then definitely looking forward towards the off season, and we obviously wish that we were playing baseball at this point in time. Felt like we had a team that obviously was capable of playing until the very end. But overall, through this week and a chance to reflect a little bit. Obviously, a very good season for our big league team, for the organization. A lot of credit, going out to a lot of different people. We've got a great organization, and I think from top to bottom this year, through baseball operations, our scouts, our player development group, they constantly, one of the best scouting and player development groups in the game, give us a ton of options and flexibility, and seeing young players come through the system, there's nothing better than that, and our group has done a great job from that standpoint. Our front office and analysts like going through the off season and looking to kind of retool this team. You need people that are constantly very accurate in their assessments and their evaluations, and feel like I get great information from that group constantly. Obviously, seeing a new manager with Mike Shildt, he had been in the organization for a few years, and we knew what he was capable of, but seeing the way the staff and Mike led this team on the field was a lot of fun to be a part of. I thought the staff was extremely tight. We had staff members that came from the system. We had staff members that had been on our previous big league staffs and teams, and then had some experienced guys that came in from outside. And I think Mike being able to blend and get those guys together on the same page and getting our team to play at a really high level, a lot of credit goes there. Again, for me personally, like, obviously, from like a lot of emotion, going into the year. I think just trying to kind of fulfill Peter Seiler and the legacy that he put out there for the entire organization, what this is about. I think it was a big motivator for everybody. We have a very motivated group, but I think making sure that we went out and kind of fulfilled that legacy and played well. That was definitely something in the back of everybody's mind all the time. Clearly it comes down to players and having super talented players that go out on the field and perform. And again, it's now been 3 times in 5 years we've played in the postseason. That's a compliment to a lot of the guys that have been here, and then some of the new guys that came in, how quickly they blended together. It was a lot of fun to watch that and see that and be a part of that. And honestly, doing it for the best fan base in the country. It's pretty obvious right now. Something's very special going on in San Diego. The fans love this team, love this ballpark, and the city is just so excited. And I think for us, that's where it stings the most. We do this job. I think from day one, I've spoke about being on that big stage. That big stage is the World Series, and we're not going to be content till we get there as an organization. But we've got a lot of people very motivated to build on this year, and seeing the excitement and the support the fans give us every single day. At heart, I'm a huge baseball fan, and I think just feeling that throughout the city over the last 8 months, 9 months, their love for this team, this organization, their appreciation. We're going to do everything we can to go get better now over the next 6 or 8 months, and be back in a spot where we're playing in October, and won't be satisfied until we're playing on that big stage in the World Series. So, yeah, I think I just want to open it up now for any questions.
Yeah, we'll get started with Kevin AC of the UT.
AJ, my first one would be what, now you've had a week or so to reflect on it, what's the explanation for how the bats went cold for the last 2.5 games?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's part of it is like postseason baseball. It's 2 games. I mean, I think you look up and if a guy goes 0 for 8, he's not a postseason performer, and obviously during the regular season it's just 0 for 8. It's 2 games, etc. So I think we'll again like talk about it a little bit more. I think our offense worked best when it was kind of move the line, use the big part of the field. Obviously credit to the Dodger pitching. We know that they've got a good staff, especially a good, that bullpen staff. We didn't quite solve that, at the end of the season. But probably a little bit of, hey, it's 2 games. I think we'll look at it as a group and see, hey, are there any other learnings we can have in terms of, to make sure that our offense from top to bottom all year long, and especially in the postseason, clicks on all cylinders. But I think again, I think we're best when we're moving the ball, putting pressure on other teams, and we didn't quite do that enough at the end of the year. And again, I think we'll dig in a little bit more there and make sure that we're in we're in a spot all year next year where we're playing the style of offense we want to play.
You alluded to making it as far as you did, being as successful as you were, being a motivator. But I know that that's like your outlook at start of every offseason. Like how are you positioned, and why will this be the year that you guys can actually make the postseason 2 years in a row?
Yeah, I mean, again, like we've got like a really good foundation, core pieces from a roster standpoint. It takes really talented players. We've got a lot of guys coming back that are just really good players and talented players. And I think again, like this team, the ability to learn and grow from this experience, from this year. I feel very confident that's there for this group. And again, I think with Mike and the coaching staff, I think we'll do a very good job here over the course of the next couple of weeks and months to kind of look at things, and if there's areas we need to shore up, we'll try to do that from a roster standpoint, and then from a process standpoint, we'll do the same. So I think it's just a lot of faith in our players, our staff, our coaching staff, learning from some of those experiences in the past. Obviously, 20 and 22, we got there, and then didn't get back in 21 and 23. So I think a lot of people that are in the building, have been through those experiences. You're always better when you kind of have gone through it before. So I think we'll put a lot of emphasis on making sure that we don't take anything for granted, and we do everything we can to get back in the postseason next year.
AJ, I know you talked about Mike and his impact. What kind of priority is it going to be to sign a different contract with him going forward, to not have him go into the next season with 1 year left deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, we just started, so just started those conversations in terms of myself and sitting down with Eric Getzender and Eric Grubner and others, and I think again, we talk about getting people with ability and then having stability, and rewarding people that perform. So I think from our standpoint, that's going to be something that we look to do here over the course of the next couple of weeks. Is try to see if we can line up with Mike and the coaching staff, and having again like having a group that's shown that they can get results and did a good job with this group and this staff is, making sure that people feel rewarded, and that we have some people that are together in that area and from a coaching standpoint, that are able to come back and kind of build and grow on what we did this year. So again, like starting those conversations, that's what the off season's for. But the motivation's there to try to see if we can line up, and I know from Mike's standpoint, he obviously enjoys it here, wants to be here, but I know his focus also is just go get better, and if you do that, then I think he has a lot of trust and faith that things are, from an organization standpoint, that we'll figure some things out there.
And I know the offseason just kind of started, but we had asked you about Joe Musgrove and replacing him short term. Now going into next season, like how do you go about that, knowing you're not going to have him for at least a pretty big chunk of the season? How do you go about filling out the rotation from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like same thing. Go back to the process. We'll kind of starting that process of evaluation, ranking, looking at trade, free agency, outside the organization, and kind of weigh out what the what the cost is to do business on that front. And then obviously like internal, like inside options. We had guys step up this year. I think we'll be looking at obviously some of the guys that were on the roster this year to step up. And also you look at guys like, the Matt Waldrons, Randy Vasquez, some guys at their first year of, from a big league standpoint that showed they can start in the big leagues. It's our job now to continue to develop those guys and have them take bigger steps here in year 2 and year 3 in certain cases. So, you talk about it all the time. We were always looking for pitching and starting pitching. Joe's a definite, it's a big loss, like no doubt to not have somebody like Joe all year long on the mound, or what he brings to the clubhouse. So we're gonna look a lot of different places, but that's what the next 5 or 6 months are for, to go line up some good options and guys that we feel good about. We've done it over the last few years. You look at Waka, Lugo a couple of years ago, Nick Martinez at different points in time, and obviously this year bringing in a Michael King, bringing in a Dylan Cease. So we will we'll keep weighing out all our options, and hopefully we feel good. We'll bring in some guys that can try to fill that void.
Hey, AJ, just kind of a big picture kind of thing here. How different does this time of year feel right now than 12 months ago when there were so many different questions surrounding this ball club with the Juan Soto situation, the managerial situation? How much more stable do you feel right now?
Yeah, every off season's been a little different. Obviously, last off season, there's the start at the top with Peter and the health situation and losing Peter. So I mean, I think that was never have no, I don't think ever be in a situation like that again where somebody that obviously you work closely with and love and respect not with us. So that kind of had a huge effect on the whole organization. But I think we rallied around that, rallied around everything as a group. Each off season brings up a lot of questions always, so obviously having coming from a spot where, we had success this year, I think we'll build and grow off of that. Every off season though, you get into the roster, the questions, like, hey, free agency trades, arbitration, that's no different, I think honestly, and every off season kind of brings up its own set of challenges and again, like I think it's kind of it's one of the fun parts of the job, but, and, we'll get back into it here in the next couple of weeks and look to make some good decisions again.
And then speaking of guys looking at extensions, you have several entering the last year of arbitration: Arise, Cease, King, and then Profar, Higashioka. Have you started conversations or put any kind of a thought into the possibility of bringing as many of those guys back as possible? And is there a pecking order with that group?
Yeah, I think so far it's just been some real baseline, some real basic communication with agents, just explaining like, hey, we're interested, and we'll have some conversations, and whether that's a multi-year or 1 year situation. I think it's just kind of like reaching out, and I think really that's all we've done so far is like reach out, start in the process of talking to teams from a trade standpoint, just kind of figuring out what teams are interested in doing, what they're trying to accomplish this off season. And then like very 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 surface level conversation with agents, trying to get a sense of like kind of time frame and timeline. But that's really what the next couple of weeks are for. And it really doesn't start until the GM meetings. So ultimately we'll keep talking and get a little bit more active with our conversations between now and I think that's November 4th. But yeah, I think the next couple of weeks we'll be prepared to get more detail on those spots. I think the good news, a lot of those guys have indicated that they really enjoy being here. They enjoy playing here in front of our fan base. They love the organization. They love their teammates. I think everybody kind of feels like I had like I don't know 5 or 6 different conversations where to a person, they were saying, hey, this is the best team I've played on. And some guys that have played on 100-win teams, playoff teams, and they were like, this is the best team. And this is, from an organization standpoint, the best feeling they've had, of just being, honestly, like to get, being together and enjoying it, enjoying baseball. So, where does that leave us? What does that mean? Again, hopefully, players, they talk and, they're interested in coming back and being a part of it. And we'll tackle all that here in the next couple of weeks and months.
Thanks, AJ.
Marty, Caswell.
Hi, AJ. What's your understanding as to what payroll expectations are for 2025? And do you think you're in a position to add after this season?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's like another question. I think again, like the next couple of weeks, we'll start laying that all out. We'll get into the ownership's always been great here of like giving us, hey, like this is having like pretty clear guidelines of what it looks like. And especially when you get into we get into November, December, when you really have to start making decisions. So I think that's all part of the next couple of weeks. I think the biggest thing I focused on right now in our group is just kind of like knowing the landscape. Here's the different possibilities. Here's what's going to be out there. Obviously, being open-minded to what different paths, take us to from a payroll standpoint. The only thing, like I've seen repeatedly, when I've been here and I think we've demonstrated is we want to win. We're here to win a championship. I think we're going to do it responsibly, but we're looking to win championships. We're looking to put to get in the playoffs. And when you do that, if we need to have certain resources, we'll have those conversations. But that's really what the next couple of months are for. And it's not like, hey, you have to be at this price point to do X, Y, or Z. It's kind of like there's a lot of different ways to do that. We've done it a lot of different ways over the last 5 years or so, and I think that's what we're going to get to over the next couple weeks and months, depending on what players are out there and what we need to do.
And the type of success that Jackson Merrill had this season, which was rather extraordinary, does that make you more likely to fast track some of your top prospects in the organization?
No, I think seeing that out there, like DeVries or Dallas. No, I mean, I think each guy's an individual. I think that's the way we treat it. We look at each situation. The players kind of they tell you, like kind of when they're ready. So, I think Jackson's situation, the talented guys that have great makeup, yeah, they're usually, we're not scared to challenge, players like that. But it's really like an individual type deal, based on their age, their development, their skill set, and their maturity. And Jackson checked a lot of those boxes. So I think our staff felt pretty confident that he had earned the right to come to spring training and compete. And then he won the job in spring training. There's been other times with prospects where they just haven't been there. We're not going to put them in a spot, where we're going to rush them or their development. But, obviously, whether it's, Chris Paddock or Tatis or, Jackson Merrill, some of those guys have come in and shown they're at a different stage and they were able to contribute rookie year. But that's all kind of individual decisions that our staff, that our staff makes.
And lastly, do you expect your entire coaching staff to return this season? I know Niebla was up. Where are things with him?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I've had a lot of talks with Mike with Shildt over the last few days. I think really productive. On a lot of different fronts, but definitely with the staff. And I think probably like again, like I think, me and him, we sit down similar to what we did last year. You sit down, and talk about what's the best staff for this team, this group. And I think in general, like a pretty good feeling that we like the group that we had from a staff standpoint. So obviously, we'll get into some contract conversation and discussions with each staff member. But I think again, I think we feel like we had a staff that was very productive. They did a really good job with a talented group and our players. And I think from Mike's standpoint, from my standpoint, looking to bring that group back. Ruben's done a really good job here. He's been a big part of it over the last 3 seasons. And really that the whole pitching group, it's Ruben, it's Peter Somerville, it's Ben Fritz, it's Mike Borzello from the advanced standpoint. They've done a great job, and Ruben's done a great job leading that group.
Dennis Lin, the Athletic.
Hi, AJ. Going off that, Ruben's been mentioned in the past as a guy who might be a future MLB manager candidate. Do you expect him to come back next year? And are there going to be conversations about maybe him exploring that path this offseason?
I mean, I think from the conversations I've had with Ruben, we have a great relationship, and I know he loves it here. This is home for him. His family's here. And I know he loves our players and the organization. So again, he's very talented and he's done a really good job. So I don't think there's any like down the road type possibilities. You say, hey, is Ruben capable of doing X, Y, and Z? He's capable of doing a lot. We're hoping it's with the Padres, and I feel confident he likes his time. He really loves the organization, loves it here, loves the city. And that's conversations for the next couple of weeks, and my guess is we'll line up on something there.
And who do you think will be playing shortstop or starting at shortstop for you next year? And if you don't have a firm answer right now, what do you see as your options there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got a lot of athletes on the field and different possibilities, but haven't really gotten too much into that. I think that's again like we'll work through that over the next couple of weeks. And I know last year we were probably it took us a little bit to get through there just because we were trying to work through the roster, Soto, Ha-Sung, situation, some different trade possibilities. I would think we'll be able to have a pretty like an earlier idea about where things are how things are gonna unfold and be able to go to the players a little bit earlier and talk about it. But those are conversations honestly for the next couple of weeks. We really haven't touched on that yet so far this offseason.
Hey AJ, you set the luxury tax last year. I know you haven't talked about payroll constraints this year, but if you're going to bring back guys, add guys, you're going to get past that pretty quick. How do you view the luxury tax as an obstacle, for you guys moving forward?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think every we try to look at it. We understand. I think our group does a good job managing and understanding what the different decisions mean. I think from our standpoint, it's not about hey, it's one set number or anything like that. I think there's a lot of benefit, like we mentioned this year. There's a lot of benefit in resetting the number. But again, like we've got a 1 year plan, we've got a 3 and 5 year plan. I think part of that too is you got to get to the offseason and kind of see the players that are out there and the different possibilities and make decisions there. But again, I think for us, it's an openness to we've had teams and gone to the playoffs with less than the under the tax number. We've had teams that have been north of the tax number. I think the goal for us is put a really good team on the field that fans want to see play and are proud of and excited about. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that, and it won't be about a specific number or anything like that. I think it's more about what fits for us both this year and the next few years, and how that fits on our roster. So.
Does that mean ownership will have an appetite to be able to go over the luxury tax if that makes sense for the roster?
Yeah, I can again, like I think these are conversations that we're going to get into over the course of the next couple of weeks. But again, like I know, like in general, like when I sit down and we talk about it, it's about winning. It's about winning championships, doing it responsibly. It's not, and ultimately, we got to get into it. But they've shown like repeatedly since I've been here, and that we're going to be open, and that's all you can ask for at this point in time, and. I think we'll see how the offseason presents itself and probably get a better sense of that here over the course of the next few weeks, honestly.
Last year, trading Juan Soto kind of was a cure-all. It cut payroll and addressed several facets of the roster. How do you view the challenge this year when there isn't that kind of person to trade and you do have a number of spots that you need to address?
Yeah, I mean, every off season, like I said, there's different challenges, situation like with the roster. I mean, we've got, again, like we've got the foundation of a good team that's coming back, so that's positive. But obviously some of the free agent players, Profar, Higgy, Ha-Sung Kim situation coming off the injury. Those are all things that we're going to weigh out, and if those guys, if those guys don't come back, that creates opportunity and spots that we're going to have to evaluate. Joe's injury that was mentioned earlier, Musgrove, and continue to add to the starting pitching front. Tanner Scott, who did a tremendous job for us, out of the bullpen. So those are all areas that we've got to look at. I think the good news is, we've got, when you come back with a team with Manny and Tatis and Cronenworth, Xander, Jackson, on, Luis, a rotation with C. Darvish and Michael King, who took a huge step this year, a bullpen that, is really deep, full year, Jason Adam. It's a good place to start. And then, like similar to last year, we had to weigh out Juan Soto's situation versus potentially moving him. We'll do that on a bunch of different individual fronts over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully have something that makes some sense when we get to spring training.
AJ, I guess have two one shortstops playing in the outfield that we're going to ask you about in off seasons, whether they're potential to move back to shortstop. Tatis and Merrill, do you view them as outfielders given how well they've played out there, or is there some possibility that they could be back in the infield? Is that one of the options that I had mentioned?
I think they probably love that possibility. They always joke around all the time, like whatever's needed. And, I think the great part with those guys, they're athletes and they're talented athletes and they can play different spots. So I think it was Dennis earlier. Yeah, we've got a lot of guys, Xander, Ha-Sung, obviously Jackson and Toddy have done it. We've got a lot of guys that have done it. But, again, like I think it's, those guys are obviously Toddy winning the Platinum 2 years ago, Jackson doing a tremendous job in center field this year. We know that they're really good in what they do in the outfield. So, we'll have that conversation, and Mike and the staff and, our front office scouting group will be part of all of those conversations. We'll obviously start the year with a shortstop, so we'll figure it out. But honestly, that's the next couple weeks, and I think the good news, we've got a lot of guys that are probably open to it, but more importantly can do it, and then we'll figure out what's best for our team, what's out there on the market, Ha-Sung's situation as well, and and go from there with it. So,
and then the last thing for me, just if you could kind of assess the way the last 12 months have gone. You've traded a lot of guys from your system. You've gained a lot of big league talent now. How do you kind of view where the farm stands now going forward with the draft class that you just brought in and all the pieces that you kind of have at the lower levels and where things are overall?
Yeah, I think it's been a theme the last few years. Like, again, like it's a compliment to our scouts and our, our scouting group on the amateur side, international side, player development. They just keep doing, you just got to keep reloading. And that draft class every single year is, probably as important as any date on the calendar. And the same thing with that January 15th international, signing period. And, again, like we've been able to make trades and you look up and internally feel very confident that we've got, a really strong farm system. And I think, you look up right now, Ethan, Salas, and Leo, they're playing in the fall league and opening a lot of eyes. From a pitching standpoint, that we've talked about it. We traded some pitching at the deadline last year. So that will take a little bit of time to replenish. But honestly, there's a group of guys that they're that honestly we talked about that are kind of starting to progress up the system, double A, triple A, that'll be in big league camp and start get some looks that we feel really good about. So, we said it a few years ago that, we felt like we had, one of the better systems in the game, even after making, these trades. I think that was after the 21 with Snell and Darvish and Musgrove. And then the same thing after the Soto deals. And we looked up over the last few years and the industry kind of tells you, and I just tell you, I feel very confident about what we have in our system right now. Again, that we have some guys that are gonna help us at Petco and probably sooner rather than later, honestly.
Bryce Miller, UT.
Yeah, AJ, coming off the disappointment of 2023, how much pressure did you feel either internally, externally, personally coming into the season? And given how much change there was from a payroll perspective and Juan Soto going to the Yankees, was there anything you did differently philosophically that led to any of the success that you had this season?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, the want to win and the motivation, I could just, speak to myself. I'm like, we have a great group and, like take this really serious. Like we love baseball and love, Padre baseball, but it's every year, and I think the fan base sees that, it's like at the end of the day, you may not agree with every move or, certain things may not work out, but the motivation to go put a winning team on the field, run a best in class organization top to bottom that Peter always talked about. We have a lot of people in this organization that share that. So it's like, again, I think, I talked about it last year, like personally, like pretty disappointed because I think we felt like the roster from the 23 season was super talented and we didn't get it done. So I don't know about extra motivation because like every year, like we're very motivated and it's one of the best traits of this group is that they're passionate and they love the game of baseball and they want to win. I think, still that disappointment from 23. I think we were very motivated, but we're very motivated to build on the success from this year. So, I can just tell you that personally. And then in terms of like, I've heard that a little bit like, hey, like, this team, this roster, we've had some really good teams and rosters. I think we're among the, top 5 or 6 franchises now. And I think the marching orders was in the 2020s and from really when I first got this job and build this thing. So, in the decade of the 20s, we're one of the more successful franchises. And every year we've got a chance to, to play deep into October. I think now we've won, been one playoff series in 3 of the last 5 years. We want to just build on that, So I think, in terms of like how we're doing it, I think it's just like make good decisions, and how we do that. We just constantly are talking the game, throwing things out there. Best ideas win. We've got a really talented group. I listen to those guys. Nothing's really changed on that front. I know they go, from my standpoint, it's trusting your people, ask a lot of questions, and have some big picture thoughts about what types of players can win and lead to championships. That really hasn't changed over the last 10 years, honestly, and definitely not in the last calendar year or so. Every year is a little different, like how to do that, with your roster. So, this year's version was a good balanced roster. Hopefully we can keep building on that.
AJ, I know your focus was the product on the field, but when you kind of look back on the NLDS and the series with the Dodgers and all the drama that surrounded it between articles and gamesmanship from the opposing manager, did you just chalk that up as rivalry in playoff baseball, or was there a sense of frustration seeing your team essentially attacked like that?
No, I mean, I think in general, like I think it speaks, just if you took a step back and like kind of look at the game, it's kind of good for the game in terms of, you have two really good teams that now, I think 3 times in the last 5 years have faced each other in the playoffs, and we obviously face them a ton in the regular season, and they're obviously right up the road. So, I think you've got, I could, from what I hear, you look at it sounds like the country was interested. You get, I think somebody said that the top rating in division in the last 7 or 8 years in a division series game, obviously big ratings in Japan. So I think from my standpoint, I look at it more as like, hey, did we, you always want to maintain focus. You want to make sure that you're locked in on like what's at hand. And then from a big picture standpoint, I think it's good for the game. It's good for the game when you have super talented teams that are competitive and, and are both trying to be the best team in the game, and creates probably a natural rivalry. And that's, I think, what we saw. Is like competitive, like passionate fan bases, passionate position, player rosters, passionate, coaching staffs, and I think arguably two of the best teams in all of baseball, and doing it again for another time, another go around, and I think that's good for baseball, honestly. And I think from us, we'll try to learn from it, and kind of make sure that we're kind of channeling that in the right spot, and we'll go from there with it. So.
AJ wasn't the greatest year for Xander Bogaerts. How do you evaluate it, factoring in that he did miss time with a shoulder injury, but also weighing the fact that you signed him for a lot of years and a lot of money, and what are your realistic expectations going forward now that he's 32?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think with Xander, it's obviously like getting, playing through the injury, kind of like getting back in the second half of the season. Again, I think the expectation with Xander is, and he'll be the first to tell you, he knows that he's, like I think from his standpoint, he knows he's got a lot of really good baseball in there. And, I think we saw it the second half of the 23 season. Again, like that's all again, like part of having a core group of guys. There may be, a year or a period of time, or half a season where guys don't quite perform at the level that they're expecting themselves to perform to. But I think the good news for us is that Xander's coming back, and he's gonna do everything he can this offseason, knowing him, his personality, his makeup, to come back and be and be an all-star caliber player. Again, he got us. There were some big hits there, some big home runs, some big, at bats. And I think for us, like to be the team that we need to be next year, it's going to involve Xander right in the middle of it, and looking up and having him have a Bogarts type year. And that's a guy that's going to be among the league leaders in average, a guy that, starts to fill up, the doubles and home run side of things. He could play up the middle. We saw that at second base. He got better and better as the year went, the first half went, then he switched over to shortstop. We'll talk to him about that and where that looks. But yeah, if we're going to be, a playoff team next year, my guess is we're having this conversation next year, and we look up and Xander, has an all-star type season, and I feel very confident he's capable of doing that. And I feel very confident he's going to look at this year. Part of it was the injury, but I think he's going to look at this year and make some adjustments to make sure that he comes back next year and he's back as one of the top players in the game, and excited to see that for him.
AJ, a lot of the public sentiment was this was kind of your finest year as a general manager, cutting payroll, doing some of the things you were able to do creatively, versus some of the spending sprees you've been on. How would you view that perspective, that working with those parameters maybe force you to do things differently and perhaps be more just streamline some of the things that you do in building a roster?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think like you mentioned earlier, it's like, every year it's a little bit different, like what the challenges are. So, but in terms of like how we go about doing it, like in the process, and like the way I personally go about doing it, like, I don't think a lot changed in terms of this year. Like, yeah, we've got to, because, we cut some payroll, or the number was at a different spot. We didn't like drastically change the way we go about making decisions, conversations, evaluations. And again, like, I've said it before, like kind of looking at it, it's like, it's never going to be every single year, every decision you make. But I think what we try to talk about as an organization is if, our area scout in the Carolinas is making a good decision, has a good process, 7 out of 10 decisions, and he's right 7 out of 10 times, if you want to say that. And our pro scout is doing the same thing, and our assistant general manager is doing the same thing over the course of months and years. Those decisions start adding up, and you start seeing that in terms of players and moves and rosters and organizations moving the needle and getting better. So I think that's just what we keep focusing on is each individual decision. Let's make sure we're having good information, making the right calls, and good things happen. So, I think that's what we focus on, Josh Stein, myself, others in the front office. And, again, I think, we've had some good teams here in the last few years. We've also had a couple teams that, there's the expectations are high, and that we need to learn from. So I think we have those experiences. I think we're looking forward to another off season, but I think the process, the way we go about doing it, the way we ask questions, the way we evaluate, the togetherness from the group, that has not changed. And I think that's ultimately why, you look up and more often than not, we're in a better spot. And that's what we're going to try to learn from this year again.
Darvish and Matsui, how do you evaluate their performance this year, and what do you want them to do next year?
Yeah, I think for Darvish, I think again like just a lot of I think feel really good about him and the way he ended the season. Obviously, for you tried to be there throughout the year, and just be there from a support standpoint for from the organizations. For him, he went through some personal things that he needed to get right. But just, the fact that he was able to do that and then come back and do what he loves, and be able to perform on the field at the end of the season, just really proud of him. He's, one of the best, if not the best pitcher I've seen from Japan, which is saying a lot. And seeing him in those playoff games and against the Dodgers and throw two gems on the field and give us a real chance to win, just felt great for him. And he put so much time and effort into it. I think the fans know that and see that, but he really does want to be the best. He's constantly trying to get better and trying to grow and learn. And I'm just really proud of him and excited for him because I know this year, for him, he went through some stuff that he was able to get right and get on the field and perform because that's what he loves to do. And I think from Yuki, talk to him like, been part of, some players coming from the NPB, and that first year is always an adjustment period. And I thought he did a great job with it. You look at the second half of the season, the walk to strikeout, he got better as the year went on for me. He was a guy, I think second on our team in appearances, right about that. So again, I think like for him, he's going to grow and build off of this year. He's very smart. He's again, somebody that puts a ton of attention to detail. He's going to go home, go back to Japan, and then come back to San Diego, and he's going to be better for this experience. But I think in general, like, first year in the league, a lot of new things, not closing, pitching, different role. I think he, overall was a success for him this year, and now it's going to be go build on that, and I have a lot of faith he will.